Donald Trump's stooges, especially those at the Fox propaganda outlet, are doing everything they possibly can to try to clean up the disaster that was his racist Madison Square Garden rally on Sunday. They are trying to make excuses for Donald Trump. They are trying to shift the blame to Democrats somehow, but they cannot defend the indefensible. And some of them are just choosing not even to try, and some are going as far as to call out Donald Trump for how disgraceful it was. And not just call him out, but admit that it is the reason he is losing and will lose. And that is exactly what one former Fox host in Megyn Kelly just did in a clip that is going super viral because it is upsetting MAGA. And I hate to say it, but she's actually spot on with what she said. And we are going to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video. And if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It really goes a long way and it means the world to me. Now, before we get into what Megyn Kelly said that is shocking her audience and upsetting MAGA, let's check out some of this weak defense from Fox.
That is why when they looked at this, they just get angry because they can't do it. They can't do it. So they go off on like a joke. To me, the irony of a joke like that is that the libs don't know about news until it first starts as a joke. They had no idea about illegal immigration. They didn't care about illegal until you make a joke about it. Men participating in women's sports, you start making fun of it, then they call you transphobic, then they find out that it's real. Inmates getting sex changes, right? You're paying for it, that's a joke. And then you find out, oh, it's real. I mean, now people know about Puerto Rico having a huge trash crisis. You know who knew that first? AOC's grandmother. Nobody cared, not even her.
It is a rather difficult competition for who is my least favorite host at the Fox propaganda outlet. It's clear my favorite host is Jack Cocchiarella. Always giving her a shout out whenever we can, but Greg Gutfeld is especially dishonest. He's always got a smug smirk on his face as he tries to make a joke. He also dresses really poorly. That has nothing to do with his politics. I just had to point that out. But what a horrible defense from Greg Gutfeld. The comedian was educating people with his non-joke. This is just nonsense from Fox. It's nonsense from Trump stooges. But the worst response, the worst defense came from RFK Jr. today when he said something that, funny enough, is kind of backfiring on Trump.
During the speech by one comedian, and the crowd, I was in the crowd at that time, and they groaned. These were not, you know,
no one was laughing.
Nobody was laughing, and there was so much joy in the room, and optimism, and patriotism, and idealism about our country, and it was the opposite of Nazism, and the need to use that most evocative and explosive and incendiary and poisonous reference.
We watched that rally. There were some groans from the crowd. There were also some cheers. It is important to remember also that comedian was invited by Trump. So I don't care how the crowd responded. That's exactly what they wanted there. But RFK Jr. having to say we're the opposites of Nazis, which, by the way, RFK Jr., I think that the opposite of fascism is communism. I don't think you want to be attributing that to your campaign, but anyone having to say, no, our campaign is not one full of Nazis, yeah, I don't think that they're really winning. And Megyn Kelly did not think so as well because she absolutely crushed Trump in the campaign. For that disaster, MAGA's not happy. Let's hear what she had to say.
Trump was not well served by those around him last night. It wasn't a Nazi rally. All that's nonsense. But I'm telling you, even for me, and I voted for Donald Trump last week, it was too brotastic. Okay? It was. You're trying to win an election in which you're hemorrhaging female voters. Maybe when you present in front of hundreds, thousands at least, at Madison Square Garden, you clean up the bro talk just a little so you don't alienate women in the middle of America who are already on the fence about Republicans. Do they have no women advising their campaign? Is there no actual woman sitting behind the scenes, coming up with the guest lineup and saying, let's just have a word with the guys who are going to be speaking about this isn't the bar. This isn't their living room. This is a campaign. This is politics. We're trying to get him elected. We don't need to rally the base or guys anymore. And it's not helpful, even if we do want to rally the base or guys, to go full off-color insults, to different racial groups and so on. I get it. Trust me, nothing that was said offended me. I'm almost unoffendable. But I understand how this plays, especially with women. And it was an effed up choice. They took what was an amazing celebration of Trump, exciting and well-attended and hugely enthusiastic, and gave themselves a big black eye. This isn't about the insane media, which did, of course, what the insane media is going to do. This is about them giving the insane media all these headlines that undermined the main man, Donald Trump, who did exactly what he should have last night. You effed up. Hopefully you'll do better in the closing week of the campaign.
Now, there are not a lot of things that I agree with Megyn Kelly on, and I certainly do not want to support her effort to try to help the Trump campaign, but she's right. The Trump campaign is hemorrhaging female voters, and they are only making it worse with other demographics as they let their racist freak flag fly at Madison Square Garden. It is an absolute disaster, and it's breaking through, according to the Kamala Harris campaign, in ways that other messages haven't, in ways that other ridiculous Trump statements haven't. This is especially damaging to Donald Trump, and they are playing cleanup and now catch up because they have lost so many days of campaigning to try to cover their asses on this message. It's the reason that Donald Trump is going to lose this election. One of them, and Tim Walz called him out for that right here.
In the last 7 days, let's just talk turkey about things. Donald Trump's a loser in everything that he's done. That's not a pejorative. That's an observation based on facts. He loses jobs. He loses businesses. He loses in court. And no matter what J.D. Vance says, he lost the 2020 election.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Governor Walz, our future VP. He's a loser. He always has been a loser. He always will be a loser. Let's make him a loser again. He's got enough problems. Let's add to him. And speaking of those problems, Tim Walz made one of my favorite jokes from him this entire campaign in that same speech. Let's take a look at it.
Things work better if you just mind your own damn business about my bedroom. Stay out of your bedroom. Kamala knows when she talks about freedom for you to make the decision, not politicians. Because I will be damned if we need Donald Trump concerned with our bedrooms. I'll be damned if we need that. He needs to worry about his own on this. You know that. Look,
you all know how much I revel in talking about the failed marriage that Donald Trump is in. I don't think the crowd laughed enough at the comment Tim Walz was making. I'm not sure it landed perfectly. It was a great joke. I'm not sure they understood what he was saying, but a clear call out of Donald Trump's marriage with Melania the other night at MSG. We saw her just kind of duck his kiss, and when they were holding hands, as I guess they weren't holding hands, Donald Trump was holding her hand and he's trying to get it away. A lot of video of how unhappy they are coming out, and of course just adding to the disaster that was that rally. And speaking of which, one of our favorite hosts on this show, Jim Acosta, went off on one of the Trump stooges that tried to clean up that rally on his show, and we got to take a look at that.
Let's discuss now with CNN political commentator Paul Begala and former spokesperson for Republican Governor Doug Burgum's presidential campaign, Lance Trover. Lance, let me start with you. What did you think of this rally last night at Madison Square Garden? Was that a good idea to have, people like that comedian up there spewing that kind of hatred?
Well, Jim, I've said it many times on this show. I think it's best when Republicans stick to the issues because I think they're going to do very well next week if they stick to the issues. And look, I don't think voters do the whole guilt by association thing, usually with politicians, unless you're Kamala Harris, who's been VP to Joe Biden the last 4 years. I think that's the guilt by association that's been going on. But I would just point to the Kamala Harris Super PAC over the weekend put out a memo saying to the campaign, you need to stop the attacks on Donald Trump's character because they're not working. And that got me thinking that Democrats don't have much of a leg to stand on when it comes to the heated rhetoric. Tim Walz himself, before this event even happened over the weekend, was comparing it to a Nazi rally that happened in the 1930s. The last several weeks of the Harris campaign have been spent talking about Donald Trump as a fascist, saying he's a threat to democracy, comparing him to Hitler. So I'm not sure they have much of a leg to stand on when it comes to this stuff. And I would just point out.
Lance, I mean, you have a comedian, telling jokes that, you would hear at David Duke's birthday party. I mean, this was vile, hateful stuff. And by the way, Puerto Ricans are Americans. I've said it once, I've said it again, I'm going to say it a bunch of times on this program. Puerto Ricans are Americans who can vote.
Yeah, absolutely. Do I think they could have got a better comedian last night? Heck, yes, I do. I mean, where's Shane Gillis when you need him? He does a great Trump impression. Absolutely. But that's why I started this segment by saying, look, yes, I think that we're obviously need to be focused more clearly on the issues, but I don't think voters go into guilt by association. And Democrats for weeks on end have been doing the same type of dark rhetoric on the Trump campaign and on Donald Trump that doesn't get nearly as much coverage. And I think that's worth discussing.
Paul, is this a both sidesy kind of thing going on here?
Well, no, Democrats are quoting Republicans in what they say about Mr. Trump. Look, there's a reason. First off, this rally was modeled on a 1939 American fascist rally at Madison Square Garden. There's a terrific short film by Marshall Curry called A Night at the Garden. People should all Google it and watch it. It's only 10 or 15 minutes, Lance. You got the time. It was modeled on that. And the reason Trump had to have this collection of has-beens and never-wases and losers and the Island of Misfits toys because he couldn't get anybody better. Not even just could he not get Bruce Springsteen and Beyonce and Eminem like Kamala has. He can't get his own vice president. Mike Pence has said Trump puts himself above the Constitution. He couldn't get his own longest-serving chief of staff, General John Kelly, a four-star Marine and no liberal. General Kelly is the one who said Mr. Trump admired Hitler. He could not get General Mark Milley, his own handpicked, chosen chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a four-star Army general, who has said that Trump is a fascist to the core. That's not Kamala saying it. That's a four-star Army general who was a Trump appointee to be our highest-ranking military officer. He couldn't get his own national security advisor, General H.R. McMaster, who said Trump abandoned his oath to the Constitution. He couldn't get his own defense secretary, General Jim Mattis, who said Trump would make a mockery of our Constitution. Need I go on? The reason he had to get some failed lounge act, some punk who just finished playing the Rama Room in Anniston, Alabama, is because the people who know him best think the least of him. And that's what the message that voters are going to take home in this election.
Jim Acosta just putting up with no nonsense. And it's the reason why we enjoy him so much on the show. Always willing to shut down MAGA, always willing to call them out, always willing to kick them off air when they're out of line, when they're lying, when they're refusing to answer questions. We need to see more of that. Come on now, journalists. There's nothing wrong with just saying, you don't need to be on air if you're just going to lie. We could use a lot more of that. Certainly could in the final days of this campaign, and we certainly will need to after when Donald Trump is trying to lie about the results of an election that I see him losing. So let's prep ourselves to treat MAGA how they should be treated, and it's kicking them off air and shutting down their lies. And we're going to be shutting down lies every single day on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.